The year was 1867, and the prairie did not forgive. That winter, wind came like a pack of wolves, biting and howling across the endless white. Snow turned men into statues, and horses into carcasses where they fell. The sun, pale as bone, gave no warmth. In such a season, kindness was not currency. It was a death sentence. The Whitlock family lived in a drafty cabin pitched near the timberline, 2 miles outside the settlement of Cottonwood Creek. The cabin had been built in a hurry the spring before, planks nailed rough, the roof patched with tar and prayer. It groaned when the wind pressed its icy palms against it. Inside lived Samuel Whitlock, a man no older than 35, but bent by loss into something older, harder. His wife had died a year earlier of fever, and though his hands could still build, chop, and mend, his heart had not yet learned to heal. He had 2 children to think of now. Thomas, 12, already broad-shouldered, carrying the beginnings of a man's burden, and Sarah, 5, his shadow, his ache, his joy, though he tried not to let it show. She carried her mother's eyes, clear blue and watchful, and her mother's stubborn streak, too. Sarah spoke little, but she clung always to the blanket her mother had stitched, a patchwork of faded calico squares lined with wool. She slept with it, played with it, wrapped herself in it when the winds howled. To Samuel, it was a reminder of the woman he'd lost. To Sarah, it was her whole world. Food was running thin. The cornmeal barrel had less than a week left. Dried beans rattled in their sack-like bones. Samuel had shot a deer early that winter, but its meat was nearly gone. He rationed carefully, giving the children more than himself, as any father would. But his eyes had grown hollow, and his hands shook when he thought no one was watching. Fear crept like smoke around the cabin. Settlers whispered of raids. A Sioux war party had been spotted north of the creek, and a rancher swore he'd lost cattle to shadows in the night. In Cottonwood Creek, voices rose against the tribes. Some said they should strike first. Others prayed the natives would freeze before they came near. And in the middle of it all, little Sarah clutched her blanket tighter, listening to her father's low prayers by the fire, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight of every word. It happened one brittle morning, when the sky was white with falling ash-like snow. Thomas had gone out to chop wood, his breath hanging in clouds, the axe blade ringing sharp. Sarah followed, her boots too big, stuffed with rags, dragging her blanket behind her as she always did. Her father told her to stay inside, but the cabin walls felt suffocating, and Sarah's spirit was restless. The air burned inside of her nose. She stumbled after her brother, her little legs half buried in snow. And then something caught her eye, a movement near the timberline, a small shape half buried, rocking, whimpering. She froze. Her brother's axe stilled. He saw it too. It was a baby, a native baby, no more than a year old, bundled in scraps of hide, face blue-tinged from cold, lips barely moving. Tiny hands clawed weakly at the air. Its cry was not a cry at all, but a faint whine, thin as a reed in the wind. Thomas dropped the axe and stepped back, fear flooding his young face. "Sarah," he hissed, "don't go near it. Could be a trick. Could be they're watching." But Sarah didn't hear him, not really. Or maybe she heard and simply didn't care. She saw not an enemy, not a danger, but a baby, and babies to her were meant to be cared for. The child's skin was mottled, snow crusted on its lashes. Without thinking, without hesitation, Sarah unclasped her beloved blanket from her shoulders. She dragged it across the snow, wrapped it around the shivering bundle, tucking its head as gently as her mother once tucked her. Her small hands worked clumsily, but her heart worked steady. The baby stirred. Its cry rose just slightly, as if life had been coaxed back. Thomas swore under his breath, glancing at the tree lean. Certain arrows would fly any second. "You fool," he muttered. "Pa's gonna tan us both if he finds out." He grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward the cabin. "Leave it. We can't take it in. You'll kill us all." Sarah resisted, her blue eyes flashing. "It's cold," she whispered. "It needs my blanket." Her words carried the weight of something larger than a child's stubbornness. For her, there was no calculation, no politics, no fear of tribes or war. Only a baby freezing to death in the snow. They carried the baby to the cabin anyway, because Sarah refused to leave it. Thomas shoved the door open, snow tumbling inside. Their father stood from the hearth, his face hardening the moment he saw what they brought. For a long second, silence. Then Samuel's jaw clenched, his voice low and fierce. "What in God's name have you done?" The cabin filled with arguments. Thomas spoke fast, defensive, explaining he had no choice. Sarah wouldn't listen. Samuel grabbed the baby, felt its frail weight, its damp breath, its heartbeat thready against his chest. His face softened for a flicker of a second. He too had once held an infant, his Sarah, this small, this fragile. But the softness was swallowed quick by fear. "You'll bring death on us," he said sharply. "The tribes don't forgive. They'll think we took it. They'll think we stole it. Do you understand?" His voice cracked, more from terror than anger. Sarah stood small and stubborn, her bare shoulders trembling without her blanket, but her chin lifted. "It was cold," she said again, as if that was answer enough. Samuel wanted to shake her, wanted to tell her kindness was not for this world, not anymore. But he saw his wife's eyes staring back at him, clear and unyielding, and he could not. Word spread fast. By sundown, neighbors had come, boots crunching in the snow outside. They saw the baby, wrapped in the patchwork blanket. Some muttered traitors. Others hissed warnings. One woman spat at Samuel's boots. "You'll doom us all," she said. Inside, the fire cracked, the baby whimpered, Sarah shivered. And Samuel knew the prairie had no mercy for mistakes, especially ones born of compassion. That night, when the wind stilled, another sound rose faint from the distance. Drums. Low, steady, pulsing through the frozen earth. The Whitlock cabin sat in silence, the fire flickering low. Sarah curled in her father's arms without her blanket, her small body cold but her spirit burning. Outside, Cottonwood Creek settlement huddled in fear. The drums did not stop, and from the darkness beyond the timberline, shapes began to gather. The drums grew louder through the night, carrying across the frozen land like the heartbeat of some vast, unseen beast. The Whitlock cabin quivered with every throb. Sarah pressed against her father's chest, feeling the hollow thunder echo in her bones. Samuel sat rigid, staring into the fire, his jaw tight. Outside, Cottonwood Creek shivered awake, men gripping rifles, women clutching children, every lamp glowing against the dark, as if light itself could keep the tribes at bay. Then came the horses. The ground trembled first, faint like the start of a storm. Snowflakes drifted from the roof as hooves pounded closer, until shadows, dozens of them, circled the settlement. Tall riders, their faces streaked with paint, eyes burning above fur-wrapped shoulders. Spears glinted in torchlight, rifles slung across their backs. They moved with silence at first, a living ring around Cottonwood Creek. Then came the shouts, words Samuel could not catch but knew the tone. Accusation, demand, rage. The settlers gathered at the edge of town, rifles in hand. Samuel stood among them, Sarah clinging to his leg, Thomas stiff beside him. He could feel the weight of neighbors' eyes on him, blaming, seething. The baby lay swaddled inside the cabin with a neighbor's wife keeping watch. But the truth had spread like wildfire. Everyone knew the Whitlocks had it. Everyone knew the drums were for them. A rider broke from the ring. He was tall, broad, with braids black as raven feathers. His horse stamped the snow as he shouted in English, harsh and accented. "Where is the child? Where is the blood of our people you have taken?" Samuel's grip tightened on his rifle, though he didn't raise it. Voices rose around him, some yelling back, others begging for calm. A crackle of fear surged through the settlers. One twitch, one wrong move, and snow would be painted red. Sarah stepped forward then, too small to be noticed at first. Her voice cut the air, high and trembling, but clear. "We didn't take him. He was cold. I gave him my blanket." The rider's gaze snapped to her. Silence spread. Even the wind seemed to hush. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the warrior dismounted. He strode forward, his boots crunching the snow, eyes fixed on Sarah. Samuel braced, shoving his daughter behind him. But the warrior stopped short, his voice lowered, almost questioning. "The blanket was yours?" Sarah peered around her father's coat and nodded. Her eyes were wide but steady, blue flames in the night. The warrior looked at Samuel then, his voice ablaze. "We take you, all of you. You will answer before the council." Gasps rippled through the settlers. Some muttered for resistance. Others breathed sighs of relief. Better the Whitlocks than all of them. Samuel saw no help in their eyes. He saw only fear and hunger for survival. He laid a hand on Sarah's head, the other on Thomas's shoulder, his rifle lowered. He knew they had no choice. They set out before dawn, under the weak glow of a dying moon. Samuel, Sarah, and Thomas rode at the center, surrounded by mounted warriors. Snow stretched endless ahead, the horizon a smear of gray. Breath plumed in clouds. Horses snorted, leather creaked. Samuel's wrists were not bound, but the threat was clear. One wrong step, one sudden move, and it would end. He rode stiff, jaw clenched, scanning every tree, every rise in the land. Thomas's lips were blue, his young face hard with forced bravery. Sarah, wrapped in borrowed hide furs, rode silent before her father, her small hands gripping the saddle horn, eyes wide at the world passing. Days blurred together, cold days, colder nights. They crossed frozen creeks where ice groaned beneath the horses' hooves, climbed ridges where wind clawed and tore. Wolves howled at night, close enough to stir unease. The Whitlocks ate what the tribe gave, scraps of dried meat, bitter roots, melted snow. Samuel forced it into Thomas's hands, pressed it past Sarah's lips, keeping little for himself. Hunger hollowed his chest, but he would not let his children weaken. The baby was there too, always within sight, carried by a young native woman who never looked Samuel in the eye. The child had grown stronger, color returning to its cheeks. Sometimes, when Sarah's gaze lingered, the woman would pause, adjusting the blanket, almost as if acknowledging what had been given, but no words passed between them. One night, as wind screamed across the plains, Samuel lay awake beside his children beneath a crude shelter of pine boughs. He watched the warriors around their fires, their shadows tall and shifting. His heart twisted with dread. He had buried a wife. He would not bury a daughter too. Yet what power did he have here? Only one. Endure long enough to see them home again. By the fifth day, the tribe's camp appeared, a circle of lodges standing proud against the snow, smoke curling from their tops. Children played near the edge, their laughter ringing strange and sharp to Sarah's ears. Dogs barked, darting between horses. The Whitlocks were led through, faces watching them from every side, stern, suspicious, curious. They were taken to a great lodge at the camp center. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and heat. Elders sat in a circle, their eyes dark and piercing, beads and feathers swaying from their garments. The baby was carried in, laid gently before them. The lodge grew silent. One elder spoke, his voice deep as the earth. "This child is ours, found in the hands of settlers." How came this to be? Samuel opened his mouth, but Sarah beat him. Her voice rose, small but unwavering. He was cold. He was going to die. I gave him my blanket. The elders murmured. Some frowned. Others exchanged looks unreadable. One elder, his face painted with age and wisdom, leaned closer, his gaze settling on Sarah. "You gave your only warmth?" She nodded. "Yes." The silence stretched, heavy with weight. Then a younger warrior spat words like venom. "Kindness does not wash blood. Our people starve while there's feast. This is a trick. They must pay." Samuel felt the air tighten, danger swelling like a wave about to break. He pulled his children close, his voice low, desperate. "Stay behind me." The council argued long into the night. Voices rose. Hands gestured sharply. The fire snapped and hissed. Samuel stood tense, his children pressed against him. Every heartbeat a drum of dread. He understood nothing of the words, but he knew their meaning. Life weighed against death, compassion against vengeance. At last silence fell. The eldest elder rose, his presence commanding the lodge. His voice rolled slow and deliberate. "Words are many, truth is few. The child was not harmed. He lives because of the little one's gift. But trust is not born in a night. He turned his gaze upon Samuel. You will not go free. You will walk with us. You will suffer with us. Only then we know your hearts. The decision struck like a hammer. A test, not an execution, but not freedom either. Samuel bowed his head. He could do nothing else. The warriors escorted them from the lodge, back into the freezing night. Samuel lifted Sarah in his arms, her small body limp with exhaustion. Thomas trudged beside him, eyes glazed with fatigue. Around them, the camp buzzed with whispers, children pointing, women watching. Some glances carried curiosity. Others burned with hate. Then, suddenly, a shout ripped through the camp. A scout stumbled in, snow clinging to his shoulders, voice sharp with alarm. Another band approached, rival warriors, not their tribe, drawn by hunger and desperation. They would strike by dawn. Chaos surged. Men ran for weapons, women gathered children. Fires roared higher. The Whitlocks were shoved toward a smaller lodge, guarded but not bound. Samuel gathered his children inside, his voice low, steady, though his veins burned with fear. Stay close. Whatever happens, stay close. Outside, drums rose again, louder, fiercer. The night was no longer a waiting silence. It was a storm gathering teeth. And as Sarah curled against her father's chest, her blanket gone, her body cold, she whispered only one thought. They'll see. I'll make them see. The fire crackled. Horses screamed in the distance. Dawn was coming. And with it, the test of mercy and survival had only just begun. The night never truly slept. It crouched around the lodges like a beast, restless and waiting. Snow whispered against hide walls, carrying with it the scent of smoke and fear. Inside the small shelter where the Whitlocks huddled, Samuel barely closed his eyes. He sat upright against the wall, his children pressed against him, listening to the muffled thrum of preparation outside, shouts, hooves, the rattling of weapons. The warning had set the whole camp ablaze with urgency. A rival band was coming, desperate from hunger, driven by the same cruel winter that scourged them all. Their arrows and blades would not distinguish between settler and native, only between life and death. Samuel knew this kind of desperation. He had seen it in the eyes of men back in Cottonwood Creek, whispering about striking first. And now, it loomed outside, sharpened into steel. Sarah stirred in his arms, her small body cold despite the furs. She lifted her face, eyes wide, reflecting the flicker of firelight leaking through the cracks. "Pa!" she whispered. "Will they hurt the baby?" The question struck him deeper than a blade. He had no easy answer, so he gave the only truth he had. Not if we stand strong. Thomas, though weary, straightened at that, his fists clenched. He wanted to be a man, to protect, though his bones still carried the softness of youth. Samuel's heart ached at the sight. Pride and sorrow knotted together. The lodge flap opened then, and cold crashed in. A warrior stood framed in firelight, his braids whipping with wind. His gaze found Samuel. "You fight with us," he said, "or you die with us." Samuel rose, steady but grim. He was no stranger to a rifle, no stranger to danger. Yet here, surrounded, he felt stripped bare. Still, he nodded. "I'll fight." The warrior's eyes slid to Thomas, then to Sarah. He pointed at the boy. Him, too. Samuel's stomach dropped. "He's a child." "So is she," the warrior said, his gaze falling on Sarah. "And yet she carries more honor than most men." His voice was sharp, but something in it was not cruel. He turned and left without waiting for reply. Samuel knelt, gripping Thomas's shoulders. "Stay by my side. Do what I say. Nothing more." His voice was iron, meant to hold back the trembling inside. To Sarah, he whispered softer, "Stay here. Don't leave this lodge, no matter what happens." But Sarah shook her head, her voice a breath. "I saved him once. If they come, I'll save him again." The words burned in Samuel's chest, fragile and fearless. He kissed her forehead, then stepped into the storm. Outside, the camp roared with motion. Warriors painted their faces, bows strung, rifles loaded, horses stamping restless circles. Fires threw long shadows across the snow, turning the world into a dance of flame and frost. Samuel was handed a rifle, heavy and cold in his grip. Thomas clutched an old musket. Jaws set though fear leaked from his eyes. The elder stood at the lodge center, chanting low, voices weaving with the rising drums. Women carried children deeper into the camp, while others prepared to fight with knives and axes, their breath rising white in the night. Then the silence broke. A cry echoed from the tree-line, sharp and savage. Shadows surged from the darkness, figures bounding over snow, torches blazing. The rival band had come. The first volley of arrows screamed through the night. One struck a lodge, another a horse, the animal shrieking as it collapsed. Warriors answered with rifles, the cracks of gunfire ripping the stillness apart. Chaos flooded in, the world ablaze with shouts, gunfire, and the clash of steel. Samuel fired once, twice, the kick bruising his shoulder. A man fell, another stumbled back, but there were too many. He pulled Thomas close, shielding him from a swinging blade. Snow churned red beneath their boots. Through the madness, Samuel caught sight of the baby's lodge, women fleeing with it clutched tight. Sarah's words echoed, "I'll save him again." Panic shot through him. Was she still inside, or had she run toward the danger? He couldn't see. His heart hammered. Then he did see her, small, darting between legs in chaos, her hair whipping loose, her arms outstretched toward the young woman carrying the baby. She screamed words that pierced through the clamor. "Get him to me. I'll keep him safe." For a heartbeat, everything slowed. The young woman hesitated. Arrows streaking the air, firelight painting her face in anguish. Then, astonishingly, she lowered the baby into Sarah's arms. The sight carved itself into Samuel's soul, his 5-year-old daughter, clutching a child not her own, running through battle with nothing but her will to protect. "Sarah!" Samuel roared, shoving through the chaos, his rifle empty, his fists swinging. He cut a path toward her, blood pounding in his ears. The rival band pressed harder. Torches hurled, flames catching on hides. Smoke thickened. Samuel reached her just as a warrior lunged, blade raised. Samuel's rifle swung like a club, cracking the man down. He pulled Sarah behind him, Thomas stumbling close. "Hold him tight." Samuel barked. Sarah nodded, face pale but set with iron. The battle raged, but slowly, fiercely. The defending tribe drove the raiders back. Their drums beat louder, rifles steadier, their unity like stone against the tide. Samuel fought until his arms burned, until his lungs seared with smoke. And when at last the rival band fled into the trees, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead, the camp stood scarred but unbroken. Snow hissed as it melted on smoldering fires. Bodies lay twisted, torches dying into blackness. Groans of the wounded filled the night. And in the center of it all stood Sarah, clutching the baby, her mother's lost blanket nowhere in sight, but her spirit blazing brighter than any fire. Dawn came pale and bruised, spreading across a camp heavy with smoke and sorrow. Survivors moved slowly, tending wounds, mourning their dead. The air was thick with grief, but also something else, respect, gratitude, a hard-earned bond forged in blood and fire. Samuel stood by the lodge, exhaustion etched deep into his frame. Thomas leaned against him, half asleep, soot smudged on his cheeks. But Samuel's eyes stayed on Sarah, who sat near the fire with the native baby in her lap, rocking him gently as if nothing else existed. The elders gathered again, this time not to accuse but to decide. The eldest rose, his face lined with wisdom and years, his voice carrying over the camp. The storm came and we stood together. The settlers did not run. They fought as brothers. And the child, his gaze rested on Sarah, lives because of her gift and because of her courage. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Some nodded solemnly. Others stared at Sarah in silence, their eyes unreadable. The eldest raised a hand. "From this day, the girl has a name among us. She is Little Blanket, who gave warmth where there was none, who carried life through fire. Her name will be spoken with honor." The words hung in the cold morning air, carrying weight far beyond their sound. Sarah blinked, her small mouth parting, not fully understanding, but feeling the reverence in the tone. She clutched the baby closer. Cheeks flushed, One of the women approached her then, the same who had carried the baby through battle. She knelt, holding out something folded, a blanket, patched and stitched with care, not her old one but new, woven in tribal patterns of red and black. She draped it over Sarah's shoulders, the fabric falling heavy and warm. Samuel's throat tightened. He felt the sting of tears he had buried for months. His wife was gone, but her spirit lived in this child, this stubborn, fearless daughter who had faced the world's coldest winter and offered warmth anyway. The camp buzzed with quiet acceptance. No longer were the Whitlocks prisoners. They were guests, tested, scarred, but accepted. That night, when the fire crackled high and the drums beat, not for war, but for remembrance, Samuel sat with his children near the council lodge. He looked at Sarah, wrapped in her new blanket, eyes bright with pride. He felt something stir inside him, something he thought had died with his wife, hope. And as the stars stretched endless above, the narrator's voice rose, low and reflective, as if carried on the wind. What can one child's kindness do? Enough to halt a war. Enough to thaw hearts frozen by hate. That winter, on the frontier, a 5-year-old girl taught 2 nations that mercy is stronger than fear. Remember her name, Little Blanket, for in the wildest land, she carried the smallest flame, and it was enough to light the dark.